Hi, this is Mike King, back to talk to you about segment 4 of Build a Better Meal. So in this segment, we're going to start talking about actually what goes onto your plate and how we're going to set that up. So if you've seen this diagram before from myplate.gov, you're familiar with the different sections of the plate that we're going to be talking about. And so what we mentioned before, when we're talking about all those 5 food groups and proper portion control as far as getting all 5 food groups on without building too big of a meal, you really want to start to look at your plate size. So plate size really can help determine what actually goes onto your plate and how much. So if you look at this sandwich and think about all of this white space behind it being the plate, that sandwich looks pretty small. So if you were to put that same sandwich on a smaller plate, it would look a lot bigger. It's going to take up a lot more real estate. And so that kind of gives you an idea about picking a plate that maybe isn't the largest, but picking one of those side plates, and that's going to allow you to portion size each one of those items out a little bit more effectively. So keeping in mind what we just saw on the myplate.gov sectioned out plate, we're going to start talking about what goes onto that plate and how you should start off. You want to start off by putting your fruits and your vegetables on that plate first. So looking at this diagram, you're going to see that the fist of your hand is going to be 1 serving of raw vegetables, and cooked is going to be the palm of your hand. With the fruit, again, you're going back to the fist. And the difference with the cooked and the raw, as far as vegetables and the size of the portion, is most vegetables tend to cook down a little bit and get a little bit smaller when you cook them. Next, we're going to move into grains. And there's a lot of things that you can know about grains, but that's the second thing that you want to have go onto your plate. And when you're shopping for grains or whole grain items, you want to look for this symbol. And there's actually 3 different versions of that symbol. There's 100% whole grain, 50% whole grain, and then just whole grain. The 100% whole grain is going to be made from 100% whole grains and 16 grams per serving. 50% is going to be 50% of whole grains are in that product, but only 8 grams per serving. The just regular whole grain symbol is going to be mostly whole grain, but then added in some refined grains as well. And again, that's going to be 8 grams per serving. And the servings are minimum per gram, so keep that in mind. Just to give you an idea of some whole grains that are out there, here's some of the ones. One that usually surprises people is corn. And corn in its natural state has all 3 components to be a whole grain, so it is considered a whole grain. However, it is not the most nutrient dense whole grain out there. So keep that in mind because it does have a lot of starches, a lot of fast acting sugars that have a high glycemic index and kind of spike those blood sugars up a little bit. Can't really talk about grains without talking about fortified and enriched food. So if you've heard these terms before, fortified foods are items that have added minerals or vitamins, nutrients added into them which didn't exist in that product before. A good example of that would be adding vitamin D to milk. Another example would be seeing vitamin C, vitamin D, iron added into cereal. There's a lot of enriched or fortified foods out there. The enriched foods are going to be a little bit different. And that's when you have something like a whole grain and you process it and you process it and you process it, and some of those items get processed out. Some of those nutrients get broken up so much that they're not really existent in that item anymore, and so they add those back in to the end.